There are dreams, and then there are warnings wrapped in sleep. In early 1968, a quiet woman from Essex, England, began to wake up trembling. Each morning haunted by the same vision: a funeral, a gunshot, a man's face collapsing in horror. She had never met him, had never been to America, and yet she knew. For 42 nights the dream came without fail, and in it the name Kennedy kept surfacing, spoken not aloud, but as if pressed into her thoughts. She reported it, she pleaded, and she was ignored. But when a bullet found its mark in a hotel pantry in Los Angeles, everything she saw became horrifyingly real. This is not a story about dreams. It's about what happens when the world refuses to listen to them. She wasn't a psychic. She wasn't a mystic. She was, by all accounts, just a woman trying to live quietly. Kathleen Middleton lived in Essex, England, in a modest semi-detached house on a street that no one ever filmed. She was 53, widowed, worked part-time at a library. She loved crossword puzzles, hot tea, and the scent of old paper. She had no political ambitions, no need to be known. And yet, in the early months of 1968, her mind became the center of something no one could explain, and no one believed. It started subtly. One morning she woke up shaken, clutching her bedsheets, heart pounding against the silence of her room. She couldn't recall the full dream, just the image of a man walking down a narrow corridor and a gun raised from the crowd. She didn't think much of it. Everyone dreams. But the second night, it returned. And the third. By the fifth night, she began to journal. Her writing was calm, matter-of-fact, dates, times, symbols, fragments of faces. Over and over the dream centered on a gathering, a speech, people applauding, and then a scream, like someone had torn the sound out of the world itself. She started to see the same face, a man with deep-set eyes and a voice that lingered in her mind even after waking. She couldn't name him yet, but the ache in her chest told her it mattered. After night 14, she stopped sleeping through. The dream woke her always at the same moment: the flash, the chaos, the sudden dark. She began to feel as though she wasn't watching a dream anymore, but reliving an event. One morning, she recognized the man's name: Robert F. Kennedy. She saw it on the newspaper while buying bread. His photograph stared back at her, a campaign smile, a tilted head, a hopeful future. She froze in place. It was the same face. That afternoon, she called the London Bureau for Premonitions, an unofficial channel created for strange reports after a string of similar phenomena in the 60s. They took her statement, but made no promises, no follow-up. The dreams continued, each one more vivid. Sometimes she could smell smoke. Sometimes she stood behind the man. Other times she was him. She felt the heat of lights, the weight of decision, the loneliness wrapped in hope. In the 32nd night, she stopped calling it a dream. She wrote, "This is not fiction. I'm inside something real, something ahead. I don't know how, but I do." Her friends urged her to let it go, but she couldn't. It wasn't obsession. It was certainty. She mailed a final, desperate letter to the Bureau on May 23, 1968, less than 2 weeks before the assassination. No reply came. And then, on June 5th, it happened. Robert F. Kennedy was gunned down at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. A narrow corridor, the crowd, the chaos, just like the dream. In the days that followed, Kathleen stopped dreaming entirely, not just the nightmare, but anything at all. Her sleep became silent, her journal ended, her voice, quiet as always, never returned to the pages. She had seen it. She had tried, and the world, as it often does, chose not to listen.
In the early hours of June 5, 1968, the air inside the Ambassador Hotel was thick with hope. Robert Kennedy had just won the California primary. He smiled, waved, spoke with the rhythm of a man who believed the tide was turning. And then, as he walked through the kitchen corridor, the sound of hope was pierced by 3 gunshots. America wept. The Kennedy family mourned again, just 5 years after Dallas. For many, it was a moment of national heartbreak. Another light extinguished, another promise undone. But for Kathleen Middleton, it was something far more terrifying. It was recognition. As the news spread across the Atlantic, she sat alone at her kitchen table in Essex, staring at the grainy black and white images in the morning paper. The photo showed Kennedy lying on the floor, wounded, surrounded by hotel staff. "This is the place," she whispered. "This is exactly the place." She didn't cry. She didn't speak to anyone that day. She simply walked to her bookshelf, removed her dream journal, and placed it in a box she would never open again. Months passed. The world moved on, as it always does. Tributes were made, investigations were launched, but Kathleen Middleton disappeared from the conversation. Her warnings were buried, filed, forgotten. Some said she'd made it up after the fact. Others dismissed her as emotionally unstable. But the Bureau for Premonitions had her letters, dated, time-stamped, and filed well before the assassination. Still, no one came. No one ever asked her to speak publicly. No one apologized. Her dreams, once vivid, vanished completely. Some close to her noted that she changed after June. She no longer read the paper. She stopped going to church. Her voice, once sharp and dry with wit, became soft, like someone constantly listening to something no one else could hear. She had seen a moment coming, and it came. But the question that lingered wasn't just how she saw it. It was why she was chosen to. In one of her final letters, written but never sent, she wrote, "It wasn't a dream. It was an echo. I just happened to be close enough to hear it before the rest of the world." That phrase would later appear in a 1972 BBC radio segment, her only anonymous mention in the public record. But even then, no one pursued her. The world wasn't ready to listen to a librarian from Essex who claimed she dreamed the future. And perhaps more chillingly, she wasn't alone. In the Bureau's archives, over 30 letters were documented in the months leading up to June 5th. Dreams, visions, impressions from people across Europe and the US. All sharing uncanny details. A political figure, a hotel kitchen, lights, flashes, panic. But no one connected the dots in time. It raises a question more haunting than any single dream. If so many saw it coming, Why didn't anyone stop it? Maybe because we're taught to dismiss dreams. Maybe because we fear what it means if they're real. And maybe, just maybe, there's something ancient inside us, a collective knowing we've forgotten how to interpret. Kathleen Middleton never tried to explain how the dreams came. She never claimed to be psychic. She didn't profit, didn't seek attention. She simply said, "I saw it. I knew. I tried." And that, perhaps, is what makes her story so powerful. Not because she was right, but because she was ignored. And because somewhere buried in the margins of her forgotten journal might have been the chance, however small, to rewrite history. We'll never know if her voice, heard in time, could have changed anything. But what we do know is this. On at least 42 nights, a woman who no one knew, in a house no one remembered, saw the end of something the rest of the world believed was still beginning.
And when that ending arrived, it was exactly as she had dreamed. The story of Kathleen Middleton is not one of fame nor triumph. There was no redemption arc, no late recognition, no grand apology. Her name faded quietly, like so many others who speak truths that arrive before the world is ready to hear them. But what remains is the question, not just whether she dreamed of Robert Kennedy's death, but what that dream actually was. Was it a premonition? A cosmic echo? Or was it something more human, an unconscious grief surfacing ahead of its time, shaped by the collective fear of another Kennedy falling to silence? Some say dreams are just fragments of the day reorganized by a sleeping brain. Others believe they are maps, drawn in a language we've long forgotten how to read. But what if they are neither? What if they're signals, transmissions from somewhere just beyond the veil of waking, meant for those attuned enough to feel their weight? And more importantly, what if we've been dismissing warnings dressed as nonsense, visions as noise for generations? In Kathleen's case, we'll never know how many lives might have been altered if her dream had been taken seriously. But hers is not the only story. The Premonitions Bureau documented hundreds of dreams throughout the late 1960s and early 1970s. Patterns, names, events that happened days or weeks after being dreamt by strangers. It was closed quietly in the mid-70s. No explanation, just silence. And yet, even now, people still report dreams of disasters that haven't happened, names they've never heard, places they've never been. Some keep them to themselves. Some write them down. And if you, like Kathleen, try to warn someone, not for attention, but because they feel something looming, and they refuse to stay quiet. In a letter never published, Kathleen once wrote, "There is something in the dream world that doesn't lie. It has no ego, no agenda. It simply reflects what the soul already knows but cannot say aloud." Perhaps we should start listening. Not to every dream, not to every fleeting image, but to the weight of repetition, the texture of fear, the dreams that don't fade with the morning. Because in a world that runs from uncertainty, maybe dreams are the last place where truth still dares to speak. And sometimes it whispers not what we want to hear, but what we must. Kathleen Middleton died in 1985. Her journals were never published. Her name was left out of the official reports. But on 42 separate nights, she saw something the world refused to see. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't dreaming alone.